What's up, metalheads? Welcome back to. Oh, I can't say welcome back. Just welcome to Full Metal 5. This is usually the weekly show where we curate a top 5 list, but today we're doing something different. And, in honor of Black Klansman, we are looking at the best of one of, if not the most prolific African American filmmaker working in Hollywood right now. We're talking Spike Lee. Looking at the best Spike Lee joints. Spike Lee is an interesting filmmaker. His work ranges from absolute greats to absolute crap and literally anything and everything in between. But we are looking at our personal favorites today. And when I say personal, we're doing things a little different. We are, rather than making an actual list, we are just talking about each of our personal top fives. And I have a great panel to discuss this with me today. First of all, I have one of the naysayers of Full Metal 5, usually. It's Paul Oyama. Paul, what's up, man?
I don't know if I like that title. I'm excited to talk
5?
about Spike Lee. Spike Lee's been one of my favorite filmmakers for a long time. I've taken a class studying Spike Lee, so I think he's just something super interesting. And then, his filmography is super diverse, has all types of stuff all over the range of different genres and ranges of quality. But we're here to talk about the best, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Can't wait to hear you have Old Boys, your number one. Next to him, I have a friend from across the pond. We have Luca Fallon. Luca, what's up, man?
I was in a very good mood, and then you brought up that Old Boy remake, and now I'm just not in a good mood. So thanks for that. I'm excited. This is an interesting list. Obviously, like a very interesting, very revolutionary filmmaker. I don't suspect we're going to have like super varied, super all over the place lists, but we're all going to be able to get like a little bit in about why we love each film so much. So that's something I'm looking forward to a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, well, your mood doesn't matter because we're not throwing up things to vote for, so it doesn't matter if you're happy or not at me. And finally, rounding out the panel, we have a small one today. It's the recent admin of Full Metal 5. It's Cody Newberry. Cody, what's up, man?
What's up? I'm really excited for this. I really do like Spike Lee's joints. He most of the movies that I have starred one of my favorite actors, so that kind of goes hand in hand. But he does great films. You're right, he does some bad, some good, but I'm excited to see, especially with this panel. It can go a bunch of different ways, especially with Luca and Paul. But that's why I enjoy them on the show so much, because they add some interest. They add some interesting but kind of not traditional picks sometimes. So that's why I like to have them here.
All right. So the way this is going to work is, we're also going to go our personal top five. So we're going to go. I'll get to our number 5, our number 4, 3, 2, and then our number 1 Spike Lee film. And, we're probably going to have some overlap, so we're not going to go into too much discussion between, overall, unless someone has a movie in the exact same spot, which is a very high possibility. So, with that said, we're going to start with our number 5s, and I'm going to go to Luca first. Luca, what's your number 5 Spike Lee movie?
It was, so number 1 through 4 for me ended up being like really easy. And then thinking of what my number 5 was going to be was a little bit trickier. There were a lot of films kind of vying for that spot. Like Chirac, I think is very good. I do like Crooklyn a lot. I have a soft spot for The Sweet Blood of Jesus, or Sweet Blood of Christ. And there's a lot there. I almost wanted to put Original King of Comedy on, but what I settled with for number 5 was one of his many collaborations with Denzel Washington from 2006, one of my favorite heist movies of all time. That's Inside Man. What I like about Inside Man so much is that it's one of his finest and sharpest movies. I think it's one of his stylistically most sort of focused and very, very cohesive film. I absolutely adore Clive Owen in it. I think he's brilliant. Denzel is obviously great, as he always is. This film was written by Russell Crowe. He's got a real knack for tension, and he's got a real knack for a sort of sense of wit. I love everything from the opening monologue from Clive Owen in the prison. I like the whole conspiracy with the chairman of the board of the directors of the bank and Jodie Foster's character. I think it's just a really sort of smart, interesting heist film that I think is kind of has a little bit of that sort of Spike Lee spark that sets it apart from maybe more traditional heist and crime film fare. So that was my number 5. I don't know if we're going to do sort of more general discussion on it at this point. I don't know if anyone else has it at the same point, so I don't know how
Well,
exactly.
I was about to say, I'm going to jump in right now because that's actually I take that back. It's not my number 5. I don't know what list I was looking at, but that is not my number 5. So no, does anybody else have it on their top 5? It's on my list. I'm not gonna say where it is, but
I have it at 5.
Oh, okay. So I can go straight to Cody next. So since Cody has the exact same spot, you can jump off of what Luca said.
Yeah, Luca pretty much, like he normally does in the show, kind of hits it right on the head. This is one of my favorite heist movies. It's probably like top 2 for me in heist movies. It always helps that with Denzel.
My second favorite heist movie. Yeah, my number 1 is Rafiki.
It always helps with Denzel Washington's in a movie because he is my favorite actor. I enjoy pretty much everything he's in, and even if it's a bad movie, he kind of elevates it. He's at least one of the bright spots in most movies. And Clive Owen is it's such a creative way to do this story, and that's what I liked. Normally, when I watch a movie, I kind of pick it apart and see where it's going to go, and this one kind of actually got me. So that's why it ranks so high, and it has such good rewatchability for me. And I think Spike Lee, this is one of his non-traditional, which I like the most. That's why I had to include it, and that's why it's number 5 on my list.
All right, and Paul, you don't by chance have Inside Man number 5 also, do you?
No, actually, it just missed out on my list. I enjoyed it a lot. It's like definitely, I would say it's like the most easily digestible Spike Lee movie. Like it's the one that's most accessible, I think, for general audiences. I mean, it's super entertaining. It's, I mean, what a fucking 2006 Clive Owen had. Like that's kind of an insane year. This and Children of Men.
Sure.
And yeah, Chiwetel Ejiofor, really interesting, like early career turn kind of here. Just coming off the back of Serenity. And I like Jodie Foster's character a lot in this, but I think for me, there's just a few Spike Lee movies I'd like just a little bit more. Although I do like sort of the commentary with Christopher Plummer's character and his history and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think what sort of gets me the most about this film is that, like, I think it's one of the Spike Lee films that works the best in terms of, like, having individual scenes that all have a really strong impact. Like, a lot of Spike Lee's films are, to some extent, a little bit vignette-driven. But this one, I think, has a lot of like really standout scenes, like Clive Owen's opening monologue, like the scene with, oh my god, the scene with the cell phone, where the guy is like trying to hide the fact that he's got his cell phone, and Clive Owen's character is going through all of the cell phones that he's taken and trying to find him on speed dial, and he just like brings him into the office and like kicks the shit out of him. It's so tense. It's awesome.
All right. Well, Paul, you get to go into what did make your list because you get to give off your number 5 right now.
Yeah, so for number 5 on my list, I know it won't be on at least one other panelist on this panel's list, and that's because he hasn't seen it yet. It's Black Klansman, the movie that we're sort of celebrating with this list here. I find this movie incredibly powerful and confrontational. I think it's a lot of the best parts of Spike Lee. It's in your face. It's with the message, but it's also with the style, and it's got a purpose. And I mean, Adam Driver is just one of my favorite actors working today. I think he's an incredible performance. Topher Grace is like really, really uncannily similar to David Duke. That's real creepy. And I won't get into too much outside of that, but I think it's an incredibly well-made movie with great style and a lot of interesting things to say. And it's just, I don't know, I found it incredibly powerful as well. And John David Washington with some early Denzel vibes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's funny, two panelists have like half of the panelists have the same movie at number 5 because my number 5 is also Black Klansman. Yeah, it's for everything.
Out of it, Cody, have you seen it?
I've seen it twice. It ranks higher on my list, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
so we're gonna get into that later for Cody, but for me, yeah, Black Klansman. Look, Spike Lee hit a bit of a rough patch in the late 2000s or 2010 at this point. He hasn't really had a movie like hit super hard. Like Chirac, probably like the genesis of his comeback. I think this is the epicenter of it.
I thought excellent.
What? No, yeah, Chirac is good. I'm not saying Chirac is bad.
I think he means in terms of populist opinion and
exactly.
Sure.
Like, yeah, like it didn't like hit with like the general public. But yeah, Black Klansman
since Inside Man, really.
Yeah, really, not since Inside Man, like at all. But yeah, Black Klansman, I think, is like it's like a reboot for Spike Lee's career. It's funny. I always say like this could be. I want this to be like the kickoff. Like he already made his movies with Denzel. Now he's gonna make a bunch of movies with Denzel's kid. Because yeah, John David Washington. This dude has he has like star potential. He was fantastic in this film. Adam Driver was amazing too. I think I told Paul this as soon as I saw it. Like I'm calling it now. Adam Driver. When this movie, when we get to that point of the year, when this movie gets nominated for a bunch of Oscars, 'cause I'm pretty sure it will. I'm positive it will. I guarantee Adam Driver will be nominated for Best Supporting Actor because he's just that good. Yeah, Topher Grace is awesome in this movie. This movie tackles so much like tough subject matter, and it does it in just such like a great, in such a great way. And like even you talk to the dude Ron Stallworth about it, who I actually did meet when this movie came out. He even talks about like how like Spike was the voice, like it was the voice like he always envisioned to tackle his story and handled with such great dignity and respect. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic movie, and it's his newest movie, but I think it's definitely one of his best.
And I will say one thing also. I know that there was a whole thing online where Boots Riley, the director of Sorry to Bother You, was raising questions about the film's sort of pro-police message. And I think that the film is just a lot more nuanced than he gave it credit for. I think it's saying more things, and it's way less about that, and not necessarily saying what he said it's saying. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, but also just
obviously having not seen the film, I think that having a decent understanding of Spike Lee's narrative voice and his director's voice, I think to claim that a film that he made might be unabashedly pro-police is a little bit silly.
Yeah, also like you watch the movie, like the way Boots Riley's talking about it makes it seem like every cop in the movie is like this like shining white knight. Really, that's not the case. Every cop other than John David Washington, Adam Driver, and his partner is a complete dick. Like there are very few good cops in the actual movie, so I think Boots Riley is just like way out of line with what he's saying, despite the fact that I also really like Sorry to Bother You, but that's a discussion for another day. So we're going to Luca for his number 4. So Luca, what's your number 4?
Watch the internet explode. My number 4 is probably Spike Lee's best movie from a technical perspective. It's probably the best made, and it's probably the most important. My number 4 is Malcolm X, which I know that we're going to be talking about, but there are 3 films that I just find resonate more personally with me. But don't get me wrong, Malcolm X is an incredible film.
Had to have Shaheen on your list. I understand.
I appreciate that. Malcolm X is an incredible piece of filmmaking, and it's a piece of filmmaking that we'll obviously probably be getting into a lot more detail later on down the list. And I'm sure I'll have things to say to what people say about it when it's further up the list. And everything people say about it will be true. It's an incredible piece of filmmaking. Denzel himself is brilliant. I love Angela Bassett in it. Al Freeman Jr. as Elijah Muhammad, I think, is what stands out for me the most in that film. It's called Scared Life of a man who is just an incredibly interesting, incredibly dramatic, incredibly cinematic individual. The story of his life to great cinema, and it's obviously very important. I think that it's it's a brave film in that it humanizes and respects and gives an extreme amount of credit to this man. It's very clearly a man that Spike Lee is very much inspired by, but it humanizes him. It shows him to be at times ruthless, going back to sort of like the Russian roulette scene and stuff like that. But it is a really smart, really just insightful and incredibly important piece of filmmaking. The fact that it's at number 4 on my list is no discredit to it at all. It's an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah, it's more of a testament to Spike Lee as a filmmaker, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm more than positive other people will have it on their list. I have it on my list higher than you do, so I'm going to talk about that later. But Cody, what is your number 4?
Well, it's certainly not Malcolm X, but my next one, which I respect. Again, these films all resonate with everybody. The one thing about me is I'm a sports fan through and through. Probably even more than a movie fan. If you can't, that's basically it. My number 4 is He Got Game. I absolutely love this movie. It's actually my first Spike Lee movie I ever did watch. I grew up in St. Louis. I had a bunch of friends tell me about this movie, and we ended up watching it in one afternoon. And it really, it's one that I forget about at times, but the more I rewatched it this past weekend, it's really good. Denzel Washington and Ray Allen, of all people, is in this movie. Pretty good, actually, for his non-acting ability. But Rosario Dawson, this movie is just one of my. It ranks up there as my sports movies. I really do enjoy it. I think it needs to get a little bit more credit because I know there's even some people out there that still haven't seen it. So that's my number 4.
Normally I would go to Paul next, but I'm cutting to me because my number 4 is also He Got Game. And yeah, to build off of what Cody said, like I approached from a different angle because I had like friends. Okay, not in the exact same position, but I had like friends who were like prospects for college ball, and I think this gives like an interesting story of like how far people will go to ensure that like prospects go to their school. Like really don't know. Like He Got Game is all about Denzel Washington. He plays a recently paroled man, and his son is like he's like the top prospect. I want to say he's the top prospect in the nation, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's the top prospect in the nation, and he gets a deal to where like he has to ensure that he has to ensure that his son goes to the alma mater of
Big State University.
Yeah, he has to ensure he goes to the alma mater of the dude who was his warden in prison. And if he does that, he gets a short parole sentence. So it's just really interesting story about where Denzel Washington's character's put in a really interesting position of like what does what does he do? Like it's really intriguing. It's really paints like a good portrait of like how far like people will go to get D1 players, how much like sports mean to colleges, and yeah, I just find this movie just like endlessly fascinating and. Yeah, it's definitely one of Denzel and Spike's better collaborations. Paul, do you have He Got Game on your list?
Oh, He Got Game is also one of my favorites, but it just missed out on my list. It's kind of right behind Inside Man. I love this movie a lot. I like a lot of the supporting performances, actually. Like I like Milla Jovovich as a prostitute. I think she gives a really interesting performance. I like Hill Harper as his cousin. And yeah, it's just super interesting. I love the fact that during when they actually played the basketball scene, Denzel like didn't go easy on him and then scored, and then Ray Allen got pissed off. That always cracks me up. But yeah, I mean, sports is a genre that I love a lot. I love watching sports, and I think this is an interesting study into sort of the recruiting process of high school basketball players and the sort of father-son relationship when a father wants his kid to do a certain thing and the kid is not too sure about it. And yeah, Ray Allen, one of the best athlete-actor performances I think that we've seen. And just, yeah, super enjoyable, super rewatchable movie.
Best actor-athlete performance since Michael Jordan in Space Jam.
Oh, yeah.
So, Paul, you get to give your number 4.
He'd be dethroned by Michael Jordan in Space Jam 2.
Exactly.
Everything will be dethroned by Michael Jordan Space Jam 2.
So my movie, much like Inside Man, is it's from 2006. It also uses Terrence Blanchard's song Photo Ops. And that's the documentary When the Levees Break. So this is a 4-hour-long documentary about the citizens of New Orleans in the post-Hurricane Katrina world. And I think it's so effective in the way that it displays people who are on all ends of the spectrum, people who are super pissed off and people who are not as much. And I think it's a really raw look at humanity in the face of tragedy. And I think you see the way different people respond to that situation. I think it says a lot about just the community there around New Orleans. And I just think Spike Lee so perfectly captures a lot of that important moment in modern American history. Just incredibly powerful. It's not something I watch all the time, but it's something that really struck me and is, for me, incredibly worth the 4+ hour runtime.
Did that run theatrically?
I think, like, maybe limited.
But it's a
Yeah, it was a TV.
It's a Spike Lee.
Originally aired on HBO, but like personal top 5, let it slide.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I was curious if they pulled like OJ Made in America, where they like put it in a theater and just ran all 4 hours. I wouldn't be surprised they did. But
They
like,
probably
yeah,
have
like,
somewhere.
Well, it's a little shorter than OJ Made in America, but yeah.
you know, it's like half the length of OJ Made in America.
Yeah.
But yeah, but One Leg Break still a great doc, still a great choice. And
It's a really,
with that,
really interesting piece of
we go back to. I'm not sure if this.
Wait, I think Luca was saying something about it.
Sorry,
I
Luca, go ahead.
do think it's a brilliant piece of filmmaking. I've got a Spike Lee documentary higher on my list, and I think he's in many ways. I think he's as good a documentarian as he is a fiction filmmaker. I think that he does a great job of showing people, and he shows the people that he's interested in, but he shows them well and he shows them truthfully. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing for a documentarian to do. His documentaries never feel like they don't have his personal perspective in them, but they also feel very much like he's listening to people.
All right. Well, Luca, you get to maybe your documentary is next on your list because you get to give your number 3.
It is not. I just did a very quick little switch around, and 3 and 2 switched places. My number 3 is from 2002. Stars Edward Norton. It's The 25th Hour. This, when I saw it for the first time, I was probably like 18 or 19, and it was one of the first Spike Lee films that I saw, and it just completely just took me by storm. It's the story of a drug dealer on basically his last night before he goes to prison. He, tries to much make amends, but like make touch with his friends and his father and his girlfriend, and just showing a person's life before they're sort of put away. It's, I think, Edward Norton's best performance. I really do. I think that he's really intense and has a real sort of honesty to him in this film. There's obviously the very famous Fuck New York monologue, which is one of my favorite pieces of sort of Spike Lee montage filmmaking. And there's a great scene where he's asking his friend to beat him up because he's afraid he's going to get raped in prison. And there's just, it's a mean film, and at times it's a cruel film. But I think it's an incredibly honest film, and it's a big sort of full force piece of filmmaking, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, 25th Hour.
Yeah, no, 25th Hours, I don't have it on my list. It was really contender for me for sure, though. I think I want to say possibly the only one of, not the only Spike Lee film led by a white guy.
Or 2, Old Boy, and this.
Old Boy.
Yeah, Old Boy as well.
Oh yeah, well I don't like to think about Old Boy in any regard, so that's that. But it's not on my list. I think Paul, do you have it on your list?
Yeah, I have it in the same position actually.
Okay, so you give your spiel on 25th Hour.
So this works out. Yeah, Lucas sort of mentioned the Fuck New York monologue. That's something that Spike had to fight to keep in the movie because the studio really wanted him to take it out. But it was something that I think he thought was really important, and I think that shows because in a lot of ways it kind of is the thesis of the movie. So I think that's incredibly powerful. But yeah, I think considering like the way his behavior is shaped by fear of prison, I think it has a lot to say about what our prisons are like. I think I think this is the best 9/11 movie that we have in America. I think it's got the most to say. It's the most poignant. It came out right afterwards, and I think it's like a lot of Spike Lee movies. It's a word I'll use a lot. It's really raw in the way that it approaches the situation, the way people respond to that. And I think that I don't know if it's Edward Norton's best performance, but it's definitely super, super up there. He's incredible in this movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman again is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Hoffman's great in it. I love Brian Cox as his dad as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love Brian Cox in basically everything. Barry Pepper, I think, is a pretty underrated actor that gives really good performance in this. Yeah, I mean,
Rosario Dawson's great in it too.
Pretty much everyone in the movie is pretty great.
Yeah.
It's crazy how Edward Norton's just the whole idea of his character, everything that he does basically is powered by a fear of not having a future. And it's just a film about panic in a lot of ways, I think, and about panic of what his life's going to be and where it's going. And yeah, oh my God, Philip Seymour Hoffman is just heartbreaking. And the score is like absolutely incredible. Yeah, just through and through, I think an incredibly powerful movie. One of Spike Lee's most personal because it's so about New York in a lot of ways, and it's so about sort of the American experience. I know that's kind of interesting with a white protagonist from a director who's so staunchly black like Spike Lee, but I think that just what he has to say here about New Yorkers and the way they respond to stuff. It's just fascinating to me. And yeah, it's an incredible movie. I don't think there's like really anything I would change about it.
All right. And Cody, do you have this on your list too?
It just missed my top 5. If I didn't see Black Klansman twice, it probably would have been on there at 5 for me. But yeah, I think it's a very powerful movie. Kind of what Luca said. It's I'm forgetting the exact words you used, but it's like a harsh movie at times. So it's like I not so much rewatch for me, but the performances in it are amazing, fantastic through and through.
And then we did mention Brian Cox, but I just want to specifically mention the sort of monologue he has towards the end when he's talking about that he hasn't had a drink in I think 2 years, but he's like, but I'll have one with you, like one last whiskey with my boy. I think it's like Let It Linger, I think is the way it ends. But I think that monologue there is really, really incredible. And yeah, Cox is amazing as well.
Yeah, the scene at the end where he's like imagining like a future. He's imagining a future with the Rosario Dawson girlfriend character. And he's kind of imagining freedom and that sort of thing. And just how it sort of crashes down and you have that sort of that shot where they're going towards the prison past the bridge is just an incredible shot. And it says so much.
Yeah, 25th Hour is it's not an easy watch, but I do think it's in the pantheon of Spike Lee movies kind of forgotten. I think more people should really revisit that one. So Cody, we get to go to you for, I think you already kind of alluded to it, but we're gonna go to you for your number 3.
Yeah, my number 3 is Black Klansman. A little bit, I think like when personal top 10s, it's kind of like what movie appeals to you guys. Like each person has their different stuff that they go for, and I'm really big on like civil rights movies, standing up against racist, which I think everybody in 2018 should, but we still have issues with that, which is sad, because I always just think that's the stupidest thing on the face of the planet. So Black Klansman, I went to watch it, and I got home and I talked to my wife, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch that again tomorrow. I just thought it was really good, really powerful, and like a way I didn't expect, because as we said, Spike Lee has not been at the top of his game for the past so on years. So this one really just took me by surprise. I'm with Paul 100%. I think Adam Driver is probably one of my favorite actors working today. I agree he will be. If he's not, I'm a little confused in the nominations, because I think he kills in this movie. I think the entire cast is great, and I think this is like a bring back for Spike Lee. I mean, Topher Grace is great in it. I mean,
Laura Carrier even from Spider-Man: Homecoming gives a really good performance.
Yeah,
I always forgot that. Like, it's not that she was bad. I just forgot she was there. Like every time I got back to her, I'm like, oh right, you're still in this movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, Black Klansman. I suggest everybody going. It was kind of not as the same at all. Don't do this, but like when Split came out last year, everybody's like, no, he's back. You should go see Split because he actually did a good movie. For Spike Lee, I've pushed it off for a little bit. I just waited for it to come out, but I would definitely go see this if it's in your theaters near you. Like it's great. Not saying Spike Lee. And,
you heard it here first. Spike Lee and Shyamalan.
I didn't say they're on the same.
Spike Lee to direct The Last Airbender 2.
Oh my god.
Oh,
he's in there. He's fighting it's rather than bending, he's gonna fight the oppression.
That movie wasn't that bad, was it?
Let's not talk about that.
Okay, but either way, I still don't think Spike Lee has done a movie as bad as movies got. He has done a movie as bad as After.
Right.
Yeah,
that's not what I was.
I'm not sure there's like 3 films that are worse than any Spike movies.
It's a great movie from a director who hasn't done a great movie in like years.
2 years.
Split is not a great movie. I contend.
Great by Shyamalan standards. I'm just
sure.
Let the man.
I don't like it. I don't like it as much as I like The Visit.
Again, I'm not saying it's great. I just went to go see it. I would have just
making a comparison
with
guys.
his name
Let the man live.
Make comparison, Luca. Let Shyamalan breathe. God damn it. But either way, going into my number 3, it's one that 2 Pounds already talked about earlier in the show. My number 3 is actually Inside Man. And Inside Man gets number 3 for me purely based on. Okay, well, anybody who knows me knows I'm a sucker for a well-honed thriller, and 2 gets on. This is probably the Spike movie I'll rewatch the most. Like anytime, it depends on the movies. Like anytime it's on, I will sit down and watch it because I'm just like so enthralled by the. I love a good crime thriller. I think Luca said this is probably his most easily accessible movie, and I completely agree to that.
That's me.
Paul said that.
Paul said that. Okay, one somebody said that, but yeah, probably his most accessible movie by like popular standards. Like it's definitely, I want to say it's probably the least heavy-handed as like far as like
Still
commentary
has
goes.
a lot to say, I think.
It does have a lot to say, but I think it's like the least like heavy-handed in that regard, which is why I think it reaches so many people. And yeah, like Denzel Washington, Clive Owen are both like phenomenal in this movie. Like it really shows the talent. Like Spike Lee is like an actor's director. I can't think of, maybe I'm just blanking. I can't think of a bad performance in a Spike Lee movie. Even something like bad.
Spike Lee and Spike Lee movies is not very good.
Okay, Spike Lee and Spike Lee movies, except well, except one gets later.
Spicy.
That's a spicy. That's a 3-alarm take right there.
Jay Washington and no, I'm kidding.
I said actors. I said actors, director, not directors, actors, director. But nevertheless, yeah, like he with his cast, he always delivers. Inside Man is no exception. I really think everyone does a top to bottom like great job. I think Spike Lee does a really good job of keeping that movie just exciting and like on the edge of your seat, like tense throughout the entirety. And I think that's the reason I have it so high. And yeah, like I said, in Spike Lee movie, I will definitely rewatch the most in my lifetime. And with that, we're gonna go back to Luca for his number 2.
We're gonna go to my number 2. Has Paul done his number 2?
No, Paul did his 3.
My 3 was the same as yours.
Oh, sorry.
25th Hour.
Oh yeah, your 3 was 25th Hour. I have a feeling this might be everyone's number 2. I think there's a strong possibility for that. My number 2 is Do the Right Thing.
Is not my number 2.
Oh,
Okay.
that's my number 2.
Well, I'll go to you next.
So, Do the Right Thing is, I think that where it strikes is such a meaningful, important, profound place that is also so emblematic of life at the time that it was made, and particularly the coexistence of Black people and Italian Americans and Asians in this particular part of New York. I think it's a pretty hard movie to watch at times. It's got some really heavy scenes, like the scene where it's doing the very Brechtian direct to the camera, just insults at people of various races and religions and that sort of thing, is at times like kind of difficult to watch. It's a movie that's steeped in sort of style, and particularly African American style, African American culture, African American life. It is, I think, probably his best film at showing a city and a community, which he does a lot. I think that I kind of hinted before, I don't think Spike Lee's a great actor, but I think his Mookie character here is a great sort of linchpin for this world to revolve. But I think what really makes this movie is the last like 20-25 minutes, from the sort of stand-in in the pizzeria with Radio Raheem and bugging out Giancarlo Esposito and Sal. And his sons is right up to the end, is one of the most sort of both empowering and really sort of hard-hitting pieces of film I've seen. It's a pretty heavy-handed movie. It's very firm with its message, but it's also just showing the lives of these people. I think how important it is to film as a whole, particularly American cinema, just makes it a really just incredibly important piece of art, really, more so than anything else. I think that, you know, Spike Lee's mission statement with this of we want some black people up on the wall, sort of calling for the inclusion, basically a seat for African Americans at the table of historical culture. And he really puts himself on the wall with this movie. I think it's basically a perfect film. I think it's pretty much flawless. It looks great. It sounds great. It's probably one of the best uses of a song, Public Enemy's Fight the Power, in cinema. I think it's, basically a flawless movie.
Although he does not have it at number 1.
I do not have it at number 1.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what you actually have at number 1. It's not my number 2. I'm not going to say where I do have it, if it is most at all, but yeah. Cody, I think you did have it number 2, so I'm going to go to you next.
Ditto. I don't know. Luca pretty much took every talking point of this one. I was going to put up the last 25 minutes of this movie because I agree 100% with him. It feels the most real at times for me of this movie. It just seems like it's not actors on screen. It's just real people in everyday life in that time. Public Enemy, couldn't agree more. I think he's absolutely right. It's probably the best use of the song. It just missed my number 1. But yes, this movie's fantastic.
I forgot I had something else to say about the film.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I just completely forgot about that. So from Spike Lee's first film, She's Gotta Have It, he's got a real interest in talking about black women and the power of black women and the importance of black women and the respect they command and they deserve. And from Mookie's sister to Mother's sister to The Girlfriend, there's so much importance given to women of color in this film, which I think is something that people don't tend to notice a lot with Spike, is that he's not only wanting to talk about black people who look like him, black guys. He's wanting to talk about, black women and the important keys, and I think that's a really, really important thing as well.
All right, Paul, do you have Do the Right Thing on your list? You have number 2 also?
Just kidding. Yeah, it's also number 2. Same place for me. I love this movie. It's also, I find it super quotable. Yo, Mookie, stay black.
Your Jordans are fucked up.
And it's like, you want to boycott someone, boycott the barber that fucked up your head. But yeah, I mean, this movie is super powerful. I think that they've covered a lot of the bases. I think that one of the lines that kind of sticks with me a lot is when Danny Aiello's character is talking about how it's not about money and how he could give a fuck about money, and about how he built this place with his bare hands. And that's why the pizza place means so much to him. And that's why he doesn't want to move from the area. I think that's the mentality of a lot of people in sort of that area. I think that, in Bed-Stuy, that's sort of a hodgepodge of different cultures and stuff. There's a lot of different racial contexts when you have the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson argument earlier in the movie with the white guy who's got the Larry Bird jersey on, obviously. And, Rosie Perez's character, I think, adds a really interesting wrinkle. It says a lot about how, as much as this is about empowering black people, it's also about considering the way that some black men treat other women of color. I think that's a really important part of this movie. Bill Nunn is incredible as Radio Raheem, I think. One of the most heartbreaking death scenes for me in any movie. And I think this might be my favorite breaking of the fourth wall use. The way that they talk directly into the camera, the different monologues about love and hate, and about just their different sort of mantras and stuff. Yeah, obviously the rings on his 2 hands. And, just incredibly moving movie that I find so good. I think that there's so many facets, and I think calling it heavy-handed, I guess it's true, but this is why that's not necessarily an insult, I think, all the time. Because I think that sometimes being heavy-handed is what is needed to convey an important message that some people might be sort of ignoring and peripherizing the majority of the time. And I think that, through and through, this is a movie with great performance. I actually think Spike Lee is quite good in it. I think Turturro is also excellent in this movie. He's got a lot of pent-up sort of frustration and aggression. He doesn't know what he's doing, and his relationship with Spike is kind of weird. But, I just think through and through it's really, really well done. And, again, much like 25th Hour, it's not really a thing I would change about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to break the street because my number 2 is actually not Do the Right Thing. My number 2 is a movie that somebody else brought up earlier, and that's Malcolm X. Yeah, Malcolm X, I think, I think from a filmmaking standpoint, you could argue this as his best like crafted movie. Because like this movie is, I want to say like 3.5 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, around that.
Three and a half, 4 hours. But like it's a 3.5, 4 hour movie that feels like it almost feels like 90 minutes because, and you really respect the reason he did that because you need a time like that to portray a figure like Malcolm. Malcolm X is one of the most interesting figures of the civil rights movement. It's because his ideologies was complicated, it was complex, it wasn't always the best course of action, but like you still respect the guy for what he wanted, and I like that Spike Lee didn't shy away. You could tell like Spike Lee really respected this guy, but he wasn't afraid to portray him as the guy who he often was, the guy who went too far. Denzel is, I think, in my mind, it's my favorite Denzel performance. I still do not understand. Well, okay, I do understand, but I don't like that he didn't win Best Actor for this movie. Yeah, he lost to Al Pacino, who granted should have won several times before this, before Scent of a Woman, but because he didn't, he robbed Denzel of the Oscar he deserved. But he got it. He got his later, so fuck it, doesn't matter. But yeah, like everything up top to bottom, this movie is, I think, like Lucas said, it's damn near flawless, even for me. And I will say why it didn't get my number one. But yeah, I absolutely love Malcolm X. It's probably the movie on my top 5 I'll watch the least, but it's the one that I think is the best and that I respect. It's possibly the one I respect the most. It's either this or the first one. And so now we go to the number ones on the list. So, Luca, take us home. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, so it's a film that's not on anyone else's list. I mentioned how I think that Spike Lee is as good a documentarian as he is a fiction filmmaker. I actually think he's better. I think his documentaries are pretty much incredible across the board. And the one that I think is the most important film he's ever made, is from 1997. It's about the 1963 Baptist Street church bombing. It's called Four Little Girls. It was distributed by HBO, screened in cinemas. It's about the 4 girls who were killed in, again, a Klan bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair, tragically murdered in an act of terrorism. But it's not just attempting to show that. Obviously, Birmingham, Alabama, and Alabama in general is a super important city and a super important state for the civil rights movement in the 60s. Obviously, we have the thing with Selma, the connection to Dr. King. And it goes into so much detail to show so much context and so many different sides of the story and so many different people's lives and how people's lives were affected by this incident. And it talks about segregation in a really important way, and it talks about the sort of the perspective of segregationists now. There's an interview with George Wallace, who was a segregationist politician, and he does the thing where he's talking about why he was for segregation. He says it's better for people, and he actually does the "my best friend in the world is black, I'm not a racist" thing. And oh my god, it is one of the most uncomfortable things because he brings his black friend over to say, like, this guy's my best friend, I go everywhere with him, he's my best friend in the world, and he looks so uncomfortable, and it's oh god, there's a visceral reaction to that. I think that Spike Lee's films are at their most important about teaching. I think they're about teaching people about sides of history and the history of people they've not seen before. And I think that this is, by a country mile, the most important and the most just bringing the story to light in such a precise and perfect and beautifully done way. The emotion that are conveyed by everyone from the families of the victims to people who sort of were there, witnessed the event, are just truly heartbreaking. And I just think it's an incredibly important movie. it's my number one because I think that if I had to show someone one Spike Lee film and that was the only one they'd ever watch, I'd show them Four Little Girls.
All right. Four Little Girls is an amazingly powerful doc. Like, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. I don't think it is, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Paul, Cody, is that either of your number ones also?
If I included documentaries, I took this as normal Full Metal 5 kind of. So I didn't include them because I didn't know this would actually probably be in a race for number one. But it didn't. None of his documentaries made my list, and that's so.
They would have counted. I would have allowed you to count docs as you could.
And for me, it's my number 6. I've only seen it the one time, so I think that's something that I've sort of wanted to sit with more. I think if I revisited it, I think it would be a different story. But I'd seen it like a few years ago, and I think I just hadn't rewatched it in time for this. But I think I agree that it's incredibly powerful. It's really emblematic of how sad the racial context was even then. Not that it's not bad now, but that this had to happen for them basically to pass the Civil Rights Act. This is sort of the catalyst, the final catalyst for that to happen. And yeah, like the ending of the movie when it ends with a trial, which just feels so hollow when you know there are other people who participated in the event and you know that it's not really doing much. It's just it's a tough movie to watch. But it's super important.
It references the church burnings that were going on in Birmingham 4 years before the movie was made. The film was made in 1997, and the incident is in 63, and it goes on to talk about church burnings, like black churches that were being burned in the fucking 90s. It's a film that, when I saw it for the first time, it made me palpably angry, and I think that that's a very important thing to be made to feel about these kinds of things, because it's fucked up beyond belief.
Right. I think it's a lot of what makes Spike Lee such a good filmmaker is that he is able to sort of incite those emotions from situations that sort of should have those sort of feelings. And I think that that's something that people, I guess, don't like to see movies for, but I think it's an important aspect of filmmaking. I think this is one of his most important movies, though it's not necessarily my favorite.
All right. Well, you can get to your favorite in a second, but I'm going to go to Cody for his number one first. So, Cody, what's your number one Spike Lee joint?
It's no shocker. It's Malcolm X. I agree 100% with Chance. This movie does not feel that long at all. I enjoy it from start to finish. I totally disagree with you that it's okay that Denzel got his Oscar later, but no. He definitely.
I'm saying at least he got one. That's
he should be a 3-time Oscar winner right now. This movie, he should
be a 3-time Oscar winner.
Yeah. He should be.
He was completely robbed.
Equalizer 2. I agree.
But I've watched this movie a lot, and again, it breaks into what kind of movies that I always seek out, and it's the civil rights kind of things, and And the thing I respect the most about this, that he did not sway away from Malcolm X of the kind of guy he was. He knew what cause he was fighting for, and didn't always handle it the best way, but they didn't steer away from that. They didn't shine it. They presented it right and truthful. So that's why I absolutely love this movie. I think it is Denzel Washington's best performance, and I mean, he's got a ton out there.
Oh, I guess I think he should be a 4-time Oscar winner at this point.
What's the 4th?
I would have given it to him for Fences.
Really?
Mm.
Well, okay, actually, coming from you, not that surprising.
Who won?
Casey Affleck.
Casey Affleck.
I would have given it to him too.
I love the Affleck performance personally. So
yeah, I like Affleck. I really like Affleck a lot in Manchester by the Sea. Although I wouldn't have been upset if Denzel won. And I was actually betting on Denzel to win.
Me too.
But Paul, what's your number one Spike Lee joint?
So my number one is it's an incredibly emotional piece of filmmaking. It's a story about an incredibly important individual, and that's the NBA 2K16 My Career storyline about Vic Van Leer.
How are we doing?
I
Oh wait.
Basquiat, Vic Van Leer, R.I.P. No,
video games count in that case.
I'm kidding. To quote another Spike Lee movie, it's
Frequency vibrations.
Malcolm. Yeah, it's Malcolm X. I think for me, it might be my favorite performance that I've ever seen. I think it's so incredible because Denzel plays basically three different characters. He plays the young, sort of angry militant. He plays a man in jail who's sort of reflecting that he plays a powerful leader at different stages of Malcolm's life. I think before this movie came out, I think there was a lot of misconceptions about who Malcolm X was as a person. I think people saw sort of Martin Luther King as the good side of activism and Malcolm X as sort of the bad and violent side, especially people...
Angry segregationist, yeah.
Especially people that are not of color, I think that was a super popular sentiment at the time. So I think this movie is so important to talk about what I think is like one of the most important Americans to ever exist. And I think that it's easy for us to say that he was too much of an extremist when our father wasn't killed by like a militant white supremacist group. I think that changes a lot of who he was as a person. But yeah, I think his turn to the Muslim Brotherhood is something that's like super important to him as a person. I think that's something that you don't see a lot is that sort of conversion and the way that religion affects people's lives. I think that it was a salvation of sorts in his life, and him finding Elijah Muhammad really shaped who he was as an activist and as a person, as a leader, as a speaker, which I think is again one of his best qualities. The scene where he's addressing the crowd is one of my favorite speeches in any movie. I think that it's just so moving. And again, this movie, flies by. I think it's so important. It's so impeccably crafted. It's also gorgeously shot, which I think is something that doesn't get talked about a ton. But I think that the way that they frame Malcolm in a lot of the shots is really important. At his highest and at his lowest, there's sort of different placings of where he is in the frame. And I think that, again, just through and through, it's just such an important and moving movie, and it's so well made, and on basically every level, on the technical side, on the acting side, and directing. It's got enough of Spike Lee style, but I think it's enough of him stepping back and allowing the man to speak for himself. That it's my favorite biographical film ever made. I think it's in my top 30 movies of all time. So yeah, I like this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, but Malcolm X got my number one. It's the one you all had number two, and that's Do the Right Thing. I think I see Do the Right Thing as the movie that really Spike Lee kind of perfected his signature style. I think, yeah, you guys said everything that you possibly say about Do the Right Thing, but I'm going to go a little further. I'm going to talk about it anyways. Yeah, I mean, I agree, Paul. Like, I don't understand why you dislike Spike Lee. Well, okay, I'm not going to say I don't understand. I can understand why you don't like Spike Lee as an actor, but I think he's good in Do the Right Thing. I just think he's overshadowed by much better supporting performances. Rosie Perez, who, I have the same problem with Rosie Perez that I have with like a Terrence Howard. I think they're really talented. I just can't listen to them for too long because I do not like their voice. But even though, like, she doesn't drag me down a lot for me. I think someone who doesn't get enough credit for how good they are in the film is Giancarlo Esposito. I think this is his best. Yeah, he's great. I think this is his best. Like, I'm not gonna say best performance. I think it's his best film role because I think the best performance is at Breaking Bad. But as far as like film, like he is awesome in this movie. Like every time he steps like in frame, he owns that scene. He's great. And yeah, I think the ending of the movie is really powerful because like it makes you question like whether or not Mookie actually did the right thing. I think it steps to, it plays to Spike Lee's biggest strength. He makes you think, it's provocative, it makes you like question things. And I think it makes him a really unique filmmaker in that regard. And yeah, I have endless amounts of respect for Spike Lee as a filmmaker and individual. I think this is my absolute favorite film that he's ever done.
One last thing, I don't want us to talk about Do the Right Thing without bringing up the guy who gives the movie its title. O.C. Davis as the mayor.
O.C. Davis
is
and
brilliant.
Someone else I also forgot to bring up. Sam Jackson as
Sam Jackson, obviously. Martin Lawrence makes me laugh in this film every time.
Martin Lawrence in his feature
film. Martin Lawrence is very funny in this movie.
I always forget Samuel L. Jackson's name in this movie.
It's like Senior Love Daddy.
Mr. Senior Love Daddy. Which that I want.
I think it's Mr. Senior Love Daddy actually.
It is Mr. Senior Love Daddy. Which like he interjects a great spark in this film. Like he's always great. Yeah, Martin Lawrence in his feature film debut. This is always good. That was my favorite Spike Lee movie. I think like that was the best movie, not nominated Best Picture in '99. And yeah, like it's always going to be like when people say recommend me a Spike Lee movie, that's always the one I give them to watch first.
I think it's probably his most like emblematic movie, right? Like it's probably the movie
Spike Lee movie.
As a filmmaker.
That is the Spike Lee joint. But that is it for all our individual top 5. Before we go, we're going to go over Jeremy's top 5, and we've already talked about 4 movies on his top 5. He has one that none of us had actually.
He has Clockers on there. I'm dropping.
He does have Clockers on there. It's 5 to 1. It's Inside Man, Clockers. He Got Game, Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing. So why don't we talk about Clockers for a little bit? I'll go first. Clockers, I think, it's in the same breath for me as like 25th Hour. It's like a great movie that people forget about. Mekhi Phifer is this is featured on debut is also like it's his breaking out party. He's great in this film. Like he's probably my favorite performance in the entire thing. He plays a young drug dealer working under another guy played by Delroy Lindo, who I like in most things. He's the only thing I liked about the new Point Break, most because the entirety he's questioning what kind of movie he's actually in. But
Edgar Ramirez slander in here. Come on now.
Oh no, I will slander Edgar Ramirez. All I want is some stupid like tree hugger, extreme tree hugger. But no, we're not here to talk about Point Break. We're here to talk about Clockers. And yeah, like I think this is a really interesting portrait about like the younger side of crime and like what happens when you fall into it when you're a young man. So, Luca, do you have anything to say about Clockers?
Clockers is a really interesting film. It's one I haven't seen in a while. I like a lot about it. I think Harvey Keitel is really, really good in it. I think that the film was written by... It's one of the films that Spike Lee co-wrote with Richard Price. I think that it's got a really sort of interesting down-on-the-ground style. Like, it feels very much like you're kind of there with these people. Kind of going through, it puts you in the environment of Brooklyn really well, I think, which a lot of his films do. It's one of those ones that's often forgotten. I haven't seen it in a very, very long time, but I think that it is a great piece of filmmaking.
Cody, what do you have to say about anything to add about Clockers?
I've seen it only once. It didn't really click with me that well. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's one that slipped through. So just one-time watch, so can't really give much on it.
And Paul, anything to add about Clockers?
Yeah, I think the scene where the kid kind of takes the fall for the crime, I think is really sad, and I think it says a lot about what crime does to youth. And I think that's kind of a really big, important element of the movie. I don't love it as a whole, but I think it's got some really interesting things to say, and I think its style is really interesting too. I think that visually it's different from a lot of Spike Lee movies. It doesn't use a ton of dolly zoom and stuff like that. It's more kind of static, and I think that's an interesting approach to the movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in my top 5. It might make my top 10 barely, but I really like Clockers a lot. I'm a huge fan.
It's got some great aspects to it, and I think that's something that's like, even across the Spike Lee films that are bad, you can usually find something like really interesting or something to unpack in it. Like, I know a lot of people aren't big fans of Bamboozled. I think Bamboozled is a really interesting watch. I think that even his worst films, again, like Sweet Blood Jesus, Bamboozled, I begrudgingly have to acknowledge, Paul, that She Hates Me has some points to it. He's a filmmaker who I think pretty much everything he makes that's not called Old Boy has something to take away from.
No, yeah, absolutely. So that's going to do it for us today. This is a really interesting type of show. I might want to do more of these later, like in the future. Just a discussion, not where we're like yelling at each other because our picks didn't make the list, which we're going to get back to tomorrow. Tomorrow we have the top 5 best R-rated comedies of the 2000s and beyond, which should be a really interesting conversation. But for my panel, of course, Cody, Luca, Paul, and myself, you can like this video, join our Facebook page, Full Metal Media. Yeah, subscribe, all that good stuff, and yeah, we'll see you next time.